Welcome to another session of Technology by Performix. I'm Ken Umansky, your host, and today we're going to have another journey into the world of technology. Today, my guest is Ben Schobert, Senior VP of Clinical Data Strategy at Optum Healthcare. Benjamin has a diverse background at the intersection of digital transformation, strategy, and healthcare. His experience includes Chief Alliance Officer at Microsoft, Managing Director at Ubicon Strategy Group, and owner of Telios Healthcare. He has an MBA from Duke and a Master's of Science degree in Health Economics from the London School of Economics and Political Science. Welcome, Benjamin. Thanks
Well,
for.
good morning. Thank you for having me.
I'm really happy you could join us. You know, you're plowing some new ground for us here on the podcast. I've not had a guest in this program from the world of healthcare technology, and it's going to be very interesting to our audience from your perspective how AI and other technologies are being applied in the healthcare world. So we really appreciate your time. Let's get right to the questions. Number one, why should listeners care about digital transformation in healthcare?
It's a great question. And I think if we acknowledge something that's unique to America, which is we spend about 20% of our GDP on healthcare, that in its own right is a astronomically high number compared to any of our OECD equivalent nations. We also get some of the worst outcomes. And so we spend the most and we get some of the worst outcomes. And so as we think about the sort of positive disruptions that the sector needs to embrace to drive additional value for the taxpayer, for the patients, for caregivers who are taking care of elderly parents, one of the ways that you could imagine healthcare being positively disrupted is through the right use of technology. And in particular, this moment that we have right now with generative AI, large language models, it's an inflection point where there's a potential for us to use those new technologies in innovative ways that could drive bottom line savings for the taxpayer, for the patient, for families, and then also increase the clinical outcomes. It's a really, really special moment of disruption, and one I think every one of us who's in the space is keen that we don't let go of.
That's really interesting. If you could talk a little bit about some important use cases for generative AI in healthcare, that would be great. I think
Yeah,
one of the things that separates what we're trying to do on this podcast and everybody else is we're not trying to talk about how the technology works, but how you're applying it and what kind of results you're getting.
yeah. One of the use cases that has gotten a good bit of publicity that I'm really passionate about is this idea of using generative AI and what is sometimes called ambient scribing to fundamentally rethink the patient-physician interaction. For any of us who have been in to see our physician, we're probably familiar with them starting off to talk to us and then turning in their chair, facing their computer, and tapping away in whatever that system is that they use to capture notes. And that is a necessary function. It drives a lot of important documentation. It drives the therapies and the care plans that as patients we get recommended for by our physician. But it also dehumanizes that experience. And if you think about many physicians went to school not because they wanted to interact with a computer, but because they wanted to help people. They wanted to take care of people, and that's an important intangible part of their lived experience as physicians that technology has the potential to give them back. And so when we think about ambient scribing, it's one of the best use cases, not just because it's theory. Right now, it's in practice. Several hundred large provider systems, really over the last 12 to 18 months, have embraced products like Microsoft Nuance DAX. And they're using it in live. It's a driving just fundamental physician productivity gains. There's this phrase that physicians would talk about, which is a night with their EMR, their electronic medical record, and having to spend pajama time when they should be with their kids or their partner, and they can't because they're having to document all the work that happened over the course of the day. And that is all changing, and it's changing for all of the right reasons because of these ambient AI, ambient scribing, and generative AI. So that's probably top of mind for me as a use case that I think is really, really, really important. There's a lot of other things that are happening in the healthcare and life science space that are a bit more future forward, shall we say. As you start to see these large language models continue to evolve, and more specialized small language models that are very sector specific. We're going to see, I think, some really important breakthroughs in the field of computational biology, being able to do clinical trials in silica. There's just some really important gains that I think are probably not as far away as we might think they are, but revolve around novel therapeutics, pharmaceuticals being developed very quickly and with great benefit, I think, to patients.
Yeah. In some of our other podcasts, we talked a little bit about AI agents. Is that something you guys are looking at, and how would you apply it?
Sure. I mean, AI agents. I mean, obviously, it's a very broad term, but AI agents. You can imagine a lot of healthcare needs explaining, right? And that explanation ranges from somebody who's got a fairly straightforward but important question about something that they were, diagnosed with. I have a long history of melanoma, unfortunately, and so I went in last week and had to have a biopsy. And when you get the report back, it's very much in medical language. And one of the things that I have done is I have gone in and I've used OpenAI and I have used ChatGPT and literally copied the note from the doctor and dropped it into ChatGPT, and I have said, explain this to me like I'm somebody with a sixth grade education.
Hmm.
And it doesn't.
That's
And it doesn't.
yeah,
And it made me as a patient with a history feel so much better about that test result that I hadn't yet had the opportunity for a physician to provide a voiceover. So I think there's those kind of agent use cases, and then there's the inevitable ones that are already fairly mature around helping people understand their explanation of benefits when they get something from their insurance company. Those are going to be really, really continue to evolve, and I think be probably so sophisticated that down the road we may not be confident whether we're talking to a human or a conversational agent of some sort. And at some level, that's a necessary and helpful evolution of making customer service something that's immediately accessible to you as a patient.
right. But I do believe that the human touch at some point in time,
Oh, absolutely.
you can't get rid of human beings altogether.
No,
Um,
no. And I think if we use technology in the right way, we actually optimize the experience to reinforce what it is about that human experience that's so special. So it's technology enabling that, not replacing that.
I've been hearing and reading about trying to build emotion into AI in the future. I don't know
Yeah,
how to do that, but so be it. Have
yeah.
fun trying to do it
Yeah,
anyway.
well, it's learning from us, so hopefully we're giving it some good lessons on that emotional intelligence front.
Yeah, maybe we can engineer anger out of the human context. So that'd be
That's a
great.
bigger question than I think we have time for today, Ken.
In what ways are the applications of AI in healthcare different from other industries?
Yeah, the healthcare is obviously more regulated,
Hmm.
right? So if you look at healthcare, and there's a number of different ways to come at that question. But if you think about the challenge that the FDA, as just one regulatory body, not the only one at all, who's interested about the intersection of healthcare and artificial intelligence, but the FDA is, I think, doing a pretty good job trying to make sure that the regulatory infrastructure doesn't inhibit innovation, that it encourages innovation, but it also tries to avoid. There was a book that came out here recently by a couple of researchers called AI Snake Oil.
Hmm.
And so, if you're a regulator in healthcare in particular, you do have to be mindful of patients, not getting unrealistic expectations or getting bad guidance based on AI hype. And so I think there is a necessary role for regulators to play as we continue to find where that line is on what AI is really uniquely, what the unique value proposition is of AI. That's going to be a fluid discussion. And I think it's fair for us as individuals and as technology adopters to be asking our regulators whether they're doing a good job adjusting the threshold for regulatory oversight as these technologies continue to evolve, because they're moving very, very quickly. And as anyone might expect, regulation is typically a following the effect of something new that's been done. And that's going to be tricky here because the technology is just moving so rapidly.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, if you wait a day, something's changed.
That's right. That's right.
Good. And
That's right.
what limits the ability of an organization to take advantage of AI? What's hindering them from starting an AI app?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, my time at Microsoft, I spent a significant part of that time delivering actual, innovation programs at scale. And at some level, I think the lessons that I took away from that are not unique to healthcare. In many cases, they have to do with things like change management, right? How do you put in place the right kind of change management infrastructure? How do you make sure that people view these sort of significant technology changes as enablers, as opposed to things that are going to complicate their jobs or in some cases replace them? And so I think there's a basic change management challenge that you have to always keep front of mind. The other thing that I would say I've learned the hard way is around recognizing that technology is a tool in the toolbox. If you're trying to ultimately be successful as a technologist, you need to understand how your technology is influencing your business model and vice versa. You can imagine a lot of really sophisticated technological solves that are detached from a business model. And so it's that linkage. And sometimes technologists, I think, assume that because of the disruptive nature of what technology does, that it will just inevitably get adopted. And it's understanding, I think, that the human component, which is where change management comes into play, the Jerry Maguire, show me the money, understand what's the business model at play and how do you tap into that business model in a way that encourages technology adoption. And then in many cases, there are just some organizational realities that, again, I think sometimes technologists can not fully take into account. That goes to the heart of your ability to access data, develop a new system, and being smart and sensitive about those issues is important.
Yeah, I think you're right on, spot on that. How should we think about AI in our future? Scared, excited? What do you think?
I continue to think that AI it is going to be disruptive. It already has been disruptive, but I fundamentally believe that every era of human advancement has introduced these kind of risks at a societal level, at an individual level, and we have figured out a way to work through them. And on the other side of that pioneering moment, we've had a better version of ourselves that we've been able to discover. And I feel the same way about artificial intelligence. I do think it's going to test some of our political systems. It's going to test our understanding of things like social stabilizers. We're on the other side of this massive debate around globalization, around whether it was any good. And I hope we learn from that debate to get a bit ahead of the curve on the individuals or parts of the country, parts of the world that potentially do face a negative impact because of artificial intelligence. And then do things, very specific things that are targeted to help them navigate that uncertainty.
Mm.
We'll see if we've learned from that prior set of experiences from globalization and we can be better this time.
Well, one of the interesting things that everybody keeps talking about is the how quick the adoption of ChatGPT was versus other technology. Do you think that's a problem or an asset?
I think it's a feature. It's not a bug. I think you want people. This is technology that is pretty democratized, and I think we want to continue with that as a thought pattern and a practice for how we get this technology in front of people. This technology, to me, I don't fully understand. How it works, and I'm still learning how to use it.
Mm.
It's a reasoning tool,
Yeah.
and it's a very interesting set of capabilities, but I'm still trying to figure out how exactly I use it in my day-to-day work. And I think a lot of people, I think the more people who get exposed to that, the more goodness is going to come from it. And I think we should embrace that with the understanding that there are going to be people who are scared and who might face some sort of economic dislocation. And we should be thinking about how to be proactive with those people and how to help make sure that instability doesn't get in the way of realizing the full potential of the technology.
Well, that's great. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. 15 minutes goes pretty
It
quickly.
goes very fast.
I want to thank you for your time today, and I also want to thank you for the stimulating discussion and insights that you've provided. I think our audience has learned a lot about how AI's application in healthcare has improved efficiency, quality, and patient outcomes. And I think that's really what the technology is meant to do.
Appreciate it.
How can our listeners contact you if they have any questions?
You can find me on LinkedIn is probably the best forum for you to track me down. Benjamin Schobert. I don't think there's too many of us around on that particular platform, so I should be fairly easy to find.
Okay. Don't miss the next episode of Technology when we'll discuss how technology is changing other businesses and other sectors. Remember, you can always find technology podcasts on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Don't forget to tune in the next time. I'm Ken Umansky, your host. And until we meet again on another technology podcast, keep innovating.